Understanding Church360 Ledger. So I'm glad you're here with us this morning, and a little bit of a rookie on some of these things as far as webinars, so I hope you'll hang with me, and then we'll get through everything and hope that you'll be able to learn a lot about Church360 today. So let me go ahead and switch this over here. We'll get started. All right, my name is Dave Farnham, and I'm a software consultant here with Concordia Technology Solutions, and have been with Concordia about a little over 14 years. So enjoy working with churches. I've actually done a few different things here at Concordia, and but I really do enjoy working with churches in regards to technology. A few things that we'll go over today in regards to housekeeping, that we'll have about 50 minutes for the presentation, and at the end we'll have about 10 minutes for questions, and then after that you can ask questions actually throughout, but we'll answer them at the end, and then the recording will be shared. So sometimes there are some people that did want to attend, but for one reason or another, and certainly on a Monday morning some things can come up, and so we're going to share this with those people that had signed up, and it'll be something that you can watch again if you'd like to as well. So this is a picture that I like to share. This is actually a picture that was taken from the 1904 World's Fair. This is a booth for Concordia Publishing House. Of course, we didn't have too much technology then, and nothing like we have now. Here at Concordia Publishing House, we have a place that we call the Innovation Center. This is a place that we meet and we collaborate, have different meetings, and it's really a fun place to come and be able to share ideas and creativity. But it's a great place, and as you can see even at the bottom there, we have been developing software for churches since 1984. Concordia Technology Solutions is the church administration division of Concordia Publishing House. And today, of course, we'll be looking at the Church360 Ledger software. Church360 Ledger is a part of the greater suite of products from Church360. Of those other products, they are our Church360 members, and that's your membership management software, dealing with your people, attendance, and your offerings. You also have Church360 Unite, which is a website builder and also an online communication and collaboration tool for churches. So both members and Unite will also be having their own webinars later this week, so you can join those. I do believe that Unite is going to have one tomorrow, and members later in the week. So Church360 Ledger, as we were beginning to developed the software for Ledger, one of the things that we wanted to do was to make it an intuitive software, something that's easy to learn and understand. The other thing that we wanted to do, since it is going to be online and cloud-based, is to make sure that it was secure. And also, of course, there are a number of different financial accounting softwares, but we wanted to make sure that this is a very church-focused software. So those are some of the things that we wanted to make sure that we had in regards to this software as we developed it. Webinar outline, well, today we're looking, of course, at an overview of Church360 Ledger. We're going to be taking a tour of the software, and of course there'll be time for some questions and answers at the end of the session today. Some assumptions that we're coming with today, really, we are assuming that you have some familiarity with church finances, but we also are assuming that most of you may be absolutely new to Church360 Ledger and don't really have too much of an understanding of it, or haven't seen much of it as of yet. And the other thing is that most of us are extremely busy, so time is critical and important. So I want to be mindful of that in your time as well today, here on a Monday morning. So we realized that talking about church finances is difficult. Ask any pastor whenever they're teaching through the Bible, when they are dealing with finances, and if that's known by those in advance, It's not necessarily an easy teaching or sermon to deliver. It's certainly talking about finances is not an easy issue in regards to the church. But we realize that every dollar that has been given has been donated by those in the church, and every donation comes from the heart. So this makes stewardship absolutely critical for the church, as being good stewards of the resources and finances that have been given to the work of the ministry, and it makes accountability of those resources critical. One of the things in regards to the software that we wanted to make sure happened is that there was accountability built into it, but we wanted to prevent the ill intention from doing wrong. Unfortunately, periodically, we do hear stories of those that there were some financial mishaps and some things that were done that were just done wrong, and so we want to keep and prevent that from happening for those that are ill-intentioned, and also prevent the well-intentioned from making mistakes. So most of the time that's the case, is that people don't want to make mistakes at all. They have no intention of making mistakes in regards to the finances, and we want to make sure that that's the case here, making it easy to use. Well, how do you do this in a congregation as far as having accountability, and how do you do church finances? Well, it's a number of different ways. In churches, we have a volunteer ministry treasurers. We may have a paid finance coordinator, or an elected church treasurer, or we may have an elected finance board. So those are some things that we might have. Church360 Ledger, as mentioned before, we want to make sure that we have more increased accountability within the software. And Church360 Ledger was also designed to help prevent mistakes. We'll see that as we go through the software. But how do we do this, really? How do we make sure that it's preventing mistakes? Well, we did this really by focusing on two key personas. Those two key personas one is the church treasurer. This church treasurer, as we were looking at that persona, is an experienced accountant, somebody whose day job may be an accountant themselves, or they could be a retired individual who worked in the area of accounting, that they oversee all aspects of the financial ministry of the church. They care about the details, and they rely on the audit trail. The other person that we're looking at, the other persona, is a willing volunteer. This individual knows how to balance their checkbook. They also know how to enter transactions. And they care deeply about the ministry of the church. But the key thing for them, since they're not a professional in regards to the finance part of the ministry or an accountant, they just don't want to make a mistake. So Church360, as we were developing that, we were developing to try to provide accountability that both of these type of individuals require. So today, one of the things we're going to look at, and one of our goals today, is to kind of look at a real-life example as we go through here. And we'll be exploring really all areas of the software. And hopefully by the end today, we're going to be able to determine or help better answer this question than we were when we got started. And that is, how can I use Church360 Ledger to support my ministry? Kind of looking at an example in regards of a youth camp today. We'll be looking at income streams, multiple expense accounts, specific budget, and different ministry leaders that may need access into the software and how that is done, and that will require reporting. So actually, before we get started, I'm going to show you one screen here, and then if you'll bear with me just a moment, we'll need to switch out some things in just a second. But first thing I do want to show you is that if you were to get started, and some of you may actually be attending today that actually have our other church software called Shepherd Staff, I just want to let you know that you can import some of your information from Shepherd Staff into the Church360 Ledger software. That's an option, and it will begin importing some of the different information there. So if you bear with me, I'm going to go ahead and switch some things over, and I'm going to turn off the webinar camera here so that we can have more time and more room for looking at the software itself. So bear with me just a second here. All right, so hopefully we'll be able to see, and everyone can see the Church360 Ledger software now. And hopefully that's not a problem for anybody to be able to see that. So this is a Church360 Ledger software. And what we're seeing here is a login screen. So as we're looking at the login screen, I want to bring everybody's attention actually up here to the top too. So in here, every church will have their own unique URL into their own account. They'll also have your login information here, and that login is going to dictate what security level, what you can actually do inside the software. So we're going to go ahead and log in here into the software. And when we do, we're going to be able to see the home screen here. So this is our home screen. This is what we will first always see when we come into the software. And at the very top here, I'll just kind of go across from top left to right. So as you see up here, the orange icon that has the $sign on it, this is really the home button for Ledger. So whenever you need to return to this page or return to the home page, you can click on this and it's going to take you back to your home page here. This is going to be your set of books. We'll kind of talk about that later. So you can have a couple different sets of books if needed. Most churches may not need that really. This icon here is going to be your check printing queue. This is a recurring transactions. This is a link into your reports here. This is our settings area, this little cog here. And then this is your user settings. So you'll be able to come in here if you needed to change your password. You'll be able to do that from here or log out. The new transaction button here will allow you to be able to do different transactions, and we'll talk about those as we go along here. Then directly underneath there is an export to Excel, a print button, and a date range picker or selector. So this one will be able to select whether we would like to see a year's worth of data, 1 quarter, 1 month, or you can select an exact date range of what you would like to see. So you can choose that from that date selector. And then we have the 4 major areas of the software: the assets, liabilities, income, and expenses. And it'll show a little graph there to kind of give you an idea of that based upon this date range selector that we've selected here. And by clicking onto these 4 areas, you can drill into them and see some more different accounts up close and personal. So this one right here, down here, is really your running balance throughout the year, and then you can scroll down here and be able to see all your different transactions. So first and foremost, what I'm going to do is take us over here into the settings area. And we're going to start off first by going down to the general area. Now, very simply, this is just the name of the church. It's something that you'll fill in when you're either starting your trial or you're starting your the beginning of your if you're starting with Church360 Ledger, and you'll fill out this information here with address and phone number, and then this is where you can also select your check style, whether you can also have 2 signatures that maybe pastor and the congregation president, or your council president, someone else, two people need to sign our account number with us, and that's filled in automatically for you. Now we're going to go back to the settings and then choose books. Now, some people have asked me before, well, what exactly is a book? Well, a book is a complete set of financial books. So one is independent from a second one. So let's say, by and large, I would say most churches are going to just have one book. However, if a church did have a early childhood center or a preschool, and they were absolutely separate from the church itself, and they had their own completely separate set of financial books, you could actually add them in here and manage their own finances separately from the church. You click on here, I'm going to add a new book, and let's just say it's going to be Crosspoint Preschool. So we'll add that in here. And this is where you're going to also choose your starting month of your fiscal year. So if that would be January or July or however you would have that, you can choose that here. If for some reason you were starting up in January but you thought that you might have a few additional entries that you might have to enter in before the actual January 1 start date of your software, the suggestion really is to back that date up to probably maybe a couple months prior to that, so that you can enter those dates or those transactions before that, because otherwise you cannot start a transaction prior to your start date here. So let's go ahead, we'll just click on add a new one. Oh, I'm sorry. I just added a new one instead of saved my current one. So let's go ahead and do that again, because I want to show you exactly how this works here. So we'll click on that, and I'm going to submit. So when I submit, it'll also say at the top the book was created, and at that point, whenever you do any type of thing and you save it within the software, you're going to get a message up here at the top, so you'll know that things were saved regarding that. And then a Crosspoint Preschool has been added. You can delete that if you needed to before you did any transactions on there. However, now when you go up to your books, you have now an option. You can either stay on the church or you can go within the preschool. So those are your options once you've created a new book. So we're going to go back to our settings, and we're just going to go up here to the fiscal years. So again, this is where you do initially choose when your fiscal year is going to begin at the starting month of that. And then when you finish years, you can lock those years as well. So now I'm going to go into my chart of accounts. So again, I'm in my financial book here called Crosspoint Church. So I know that this is where this is it. And the assets here, again, in our chart of accounts, we have assets, liabilities, income, and expenses. Our assets, really, to kind of break that down, really those are money, building, land, or maybe equipment of the church, those things that are assets for us. We can set up multiple bank accounts if we like to. As seen here as an example, we have Central Trust, but within the Central Trust, we have a checking account and a savings account. Notice that these things are indented underneath the main account here of Central Trust. And then we have another account set up here, and this category is called Farmers Bank with a savings and a money market there. So we have those set up here. You'll notice that there are also what's called restricted, adding like this plus sign to add a new restricted fund, but I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. Down below here, you will see where it says new account or new category. Now, these two buttons that we see down here, you will see those appearing in the liabilities, the income, and the expense areas too. And the reason for that is because you can manage different information by creating a new category, which is kind of like a folder, and then your accounts are the accounts underneath that folder. So for example, let me show you up here with the central trust. Now the central trust is seen as a category. And then the checking is also seen as a category underneath the central trust. So these are all part of the central trust, this bank. And so these are, both checking and savings are your categories. Now once you see the central trust checking here, this has an account number by that. Now I will let you know that you can put in account numbers, but it is not an absolute requirement that you do so. So once I click onto that, you can see that there is an account number field in that. And so it is there. So what you can do is you'll see that the amount of the 61,600 and the 165 amount, when these two things are added up, that's what becomes, it rolls up into this 227 amount. So all of these subcategories and the accounts underneath those categories are going to roll up into the total here. So I hope that you can see that there. And what we're going to do today is I'm actually going to split off from this new restricted fund, and I'm going to create a restricted fund. Now some people might know this as like a dedicated, some people in some churches call it a dedicated fund, but I'm going to create one here, and I'm going to say that money has been given for the youth, and it's only designated for that particular. So it's going to be restricted just for the youth. So I'm going to call that into this as a subcategory here, youth restricted. And I'm going to hit submit. So now you can see as we're splitting this checking amount, a certain dollar amount here is seen as unrestricted. That means it can be used for however we would like or need to use that, but this amount that we are going to add in here is going to be just restricted just to the youth. So let's now go in down here into the liabilities. Then the liabilities, typically liabilities are going to be debts of the church, such as maybe a mortgage. And you can see that you can put different categories in there as well, and accounts. Then we have income. And for most churches, really your income is going to consist of offerings, but it could also consist of maybe interest on bank accounts and or property rental. So, but typically this is going to be just for offerings for a lot of different churches, but it can be other things as well. So right now I've already added a youth fund in here as we're looking at youth camp. So when we have some things in here, we're going to add like some expense accounts. So again, as I go down here further, again, we can add categories and we can add accounts. I want to let you know too that when you add them, you can also drag and drop them under certain areas too. Expenses. Expenses really just show how money is spent at the church. So what we're going to do today, as I scroll down here, you'll see that there's a youth general expenses and a youth mission trip, but what we want to do is we're going to add a category in there called youth camp. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add, actually a new account. So I'm going to add in here a youth camp, and we will have to give it an initial balance. If we don't, it's going to let us know that we do have to enter in something into that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on submit. So there we have that youth camp, and we're going to bring that up here. Drop that in there, but I'm going to bring that up a little bit higher actually, and I'm going to slide that in there. So there you can see that we can bring that underneath the youth category of expenses and make sure that that slides underneath the youth. So again, anything that happens to go in these categories will all roll up to the youth total, which again is going to roll up into the total for education. So of course right now all we have is zeros on here. So that's what we have, and that's how you can create your expense accounts and your income accounts as well, and you can have multiple expense accounts, as many as you need to. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go up into our new transactions. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and click on this save. Whoops. So here's what you can see. If for some reason you didn't save what you did, it's going to ask that you confirm and you save what you did. So I'm going to go ahead and confirm that. Otherwise, it's going to tell me that, you know, I need to go ahead and save that before I leave that page. So I'm going to back here on the home page, and we'll go into the transactions. So we have several different transaction types, and one of the things that I'll kind of clarify here is the difference between a payment and a check, because sometimes there are some questions in regards to those things. Really the payment is going to be, let's say that you've already made a electronic payment somewhere and you just need to register that you've made that payment. So that's what a payment generally is for, and a check is for really when you're writing that check. And you can then print the check here from the software, or at least make note that you wrote the check and what the check number is on here as well. So first of all, right now we're just going to look at a transfer. So we can come in here and let's say we're going to transfer some money into that new youth restricted fund. We're going to take it from the central checking. And let's say that right here we're going to add in $3,500. We're going to take this from one asset, the unrestricted central trust checking, and we're going to bring that into the youth restricted. So you can divide that into other different places that you needed to take that if you needed to do that. But notice here that what it wants to do is automatically, and we can put a memo in here if we'd like to, but we need to be able to balance these $2 amounts here. This is what some people in the accounting area call it the T-charts, and down here below where you balance out your debits and credits. The great thing about Ledger is it's going to automatically do that for you. Let me show you here. If I were to put in, let's say that I made a mistake here and I put 350 instead of that, and I tried to save that amount. If I were to do that, it's going to tell me that, you know what, things don't balance out quite right. And so you're going to have to make sure that these are balancing out on both sides. And so I'm going to have to come back in here, and if I do make the change here, now you'll see that we're good to go. Now it does give you the option that you can make it a recurring, and if you did, you could make it recurring on a weekly or a monthly basis, but we're not going to do that on this particular one, so we're just going to click Save. So that's a transfer, and showing you how to transfer that, and when we've done that, you'll see even here on our home page that it's going to show me what's happened. So we've just added $3,500 into the youth restricted asset account, but we've taken away from the unrestricted. So that's where you're going to see that right there. All right. So now let's go back up to a transaction and let's take a look at another transaction. So we can take a look at a deposit. So one of the ways that we can do a deposit is we can start it off, and generally let's say that this is going to be a weekly deposit, maybe coming over from an offering that was given. So we're going to say that this is for offering from, just say this is offerings from, we'll say that's from the 18th, June 18th. So we're going to have that deposited into the checking. So this is going to be, these offerings are going into this asset account. So we're going to say this is going to be, let's say, $4,600. So now, of the $4,600, we can say how much it goes into each different fund. So we're going to say $3,500. Whoops, I kind of messed that up. So let's go into there. In the general fund, we're going to say that $3,500 went in here. So let's change that to $3,500. And then we also have the building fund. So certain people gave to the building fund. So I'm going to select that and say that $600 was given into the building fund. Then we had missions, and of the missions fund, let's say that $400 was given there, and then maybe we have we could put it in the youth fund to say the remaining dollar amounts is $100, and that's going in there. So we wouldn't typically make that recurring just because we don't have the same amount coming in on a weekly basis. But now that we've got everything that's going to balance out here, and we're saying this is from, we could say this is, actually we'll go ahead and put like this, and then we can save that. So now we can see that the transaction was created, and if we went back here, we can see that there is a deposit there. So there's other ways to do that. For those churches that may already have our Church360 member software, we have what we call pending transactions. And so as that financial person is putting in, the financial secretary is putting in their offerings, it automatically will flow over into the Church360 ledger, from members to ledger. So here we can see that on June 11th, we've already got a dollar amount here, and now let's say they've confirmed it and everything is there, so it brings it on over here. This little icon here shows us that this is coming over from 360 members, so I can click on the deposit. Now what I'll do is I'm going to select where that is going to go, into which asset account. Notice right here over on the right hand side where we need to put these monies, okay? It's going to tell me how the money was given, if it was designated in some way, and it's showing that. So now what I need to do is just select the appropriate one. So building fund is going to go to building. It's already showing me that here. Once I've connected these, and this is going to go to general, this one is to missions, and this one is to youth. So now that I've got all of that set in place, I can click the Save button, and it's going to do the same thing. If I go into another one, it's also going to do the same thing. Now if I go into another pending transactions, I'll show you this. It's going to remember how that money was given. So the next time that I'm in here, you'll notice, let's say this was for offerings for, so I'm going to select that, and the general, the missions, and the youth were already put in here for me. Once I've already connected them once, it's going to assume that these should stay the same. Now, each time. However, if you did need to change it, you can change them. But the good thing is it's already going to keep that connectivity that you've already done previously. So that I can click Save on that. So hopefully that makes sense as we take a look at that too. Payment, again, this is going to be primarily something that is an electronic payment that you're making note of here in a payment field. And so we can come in here and say, all right, let's pay our monthly internet bills. And so we're going to come in here and say that's going to go to AT&T. We're going to pay that out of this asset account here. Let's say it's just $100 even. We're going to take this out of this particular area, and then this could be for, we could put on here monthly internet. So at this point, if you needed to make this recurring, and maybe this, since this dollar amount may always be the same, it might make sense that we can automatically make a recurring transaction from this. So once we do that, you can see now that how do we want to make this? Is every single, you have different options here, week, month, or year. And so you can see how helpful that might be. And then you can save that, or you could cancel that. So maybe for this, I might not make that automatically a recurring. I could just say this is going to be for June, and then click Save. So there we can see this again here too, about information on the payee and other things too. So we do have, if you wanted to check on one of your payees, and I'll show you this here too, I'll kind of jump over here. We do have it where we can click on here the payees. These are all the people that we pay money to that are those that have accounts with us. But another quick way to jump into a payee would be to click on this, like the AT&T Uverse, and then you can see here what has transpired here, and you can change the date range if you needed to, or other things like that too. So you'll be able to see different things about payees from here. You can go to your payees area here and see more information about them. But I'm going to go back here, and now I'm going to go into the check area. So I'm going to write a check, and one of the things I'm going to do is write a check, and this is in regards to like our youth camp example that we're talking about. So this is going to be really for something that might be paying for camp. So we're going to say this is a camp deposit. And we're going to, we could keep that, we'll just make that on the 10th. And then we're going to add in a new one. Now this payee is not in our list of payees. We're just going to do this on the fly as we're creating the check. So this one here is going to be Lake Williamson Retreat Center. So I can put in a check number here. As I go to print that check, and I can always change that check to be the appropriate check number if that has changed by the time I need to print that. So let's say that this is going to actually be coming from the youth restricted funds. So it can come from that. And let's say that the amount here is $1,200. If you remember that we added that the youth camp expenses, so we can take that out of there. And so, oops, so we're going to get in here. Bear with me just a second here. So then we're going to go ahead, and we've got our debits and credits balancing there. We're going to click on that and click Save. So then it's going to tell us that the check was added to our print queue. We can click here to be taken to the print queue if we'd like, and I'll go ahead and do that. we've got a couple checks that are pending for us. Now we can come in here and we can just click on one and say, oh yeah, we've already paid that. We don't have to print the check, or so that way we can come in here and we can go mark the check as printed. So I can click on that and I can select that, and it's going to remove it from the print queue. So I can do that. Or we could print here, and then we just have to make sure that we have the check in our printer and ready to go. So there are certain checks that you can buy that you can print directly to it, and we can certainly give you more information in regards to those types of checks that you need to get that will work directly with the Church360 Ledger software. So hopefully that makes sense, and I do want to show you real quickly here. This is a nice thing. As you're creating that check on the fly and adding that payee, you'll see now that once we go into the payees, that we do have the Lake Williamson Retreat Center. It was not in our drop-down listing from before, but as we were writing the check, we don't have to come in here first and fill this out and then go back. We can actually put it in the check, and then we can put in the other information later on. So we can come in here on the address and we can put in more information. So now I can add the other information about this payee, and that way it's going to be in here and give us all the information that we need. So we can put all that information in here for us. And now that way it'll be ready to go. We'll have all the information that we need as a future reference. So then you can put in any additional notes that you want to put in. So all of that, now we know that the payee was updated. Okay. So now we've looked at several of these: transfer, deposit, payment, check, and now the journal entry. So the journal entry is used really mostly by experienced accountants, or those that have a lot of experience in regards to finance software, and because at this point in time, once you go into the journal entry, you're going to have to make sure that your debits and credits actually match up, and everything is done correctly. So for those that already are accountants, experienced accountants, they already know that really every type of transaction that we're doing is a journal entry anyway. But for others that may not have quite all of the experience of putting in journal entries and doing them correctly, it takes all the guesswork out of it. For those and I put myself in this category, those that might need just the extra assurance, knowing that if you come in here and you're going to transfer funds or make a payment, that all your debits and credits are going to automatically follow, and they're going to balance out. And if they don't balance out, it's not going to allow you to be able to save that until they do so. So that's what you're going to be able to know and rest assured that you're doing things correctly. So let's go back to our home page. And one other thing, let's do, I think one more. We might make, let's make a payment here for one other thing, I think. We'll go in here, we're going to make a payee to be CPH. And we're going to take this from the restricted, and on our youth camp we're going to have some book giveaways. So let's put in here book giveaways. We've made payment already electronically to CPH, but we're going to say that this was $50. And we're going to take this again out of that youth camp. So then this is a one-time occurrence, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Notice that our debits and credits match. If I were to add again that, and so I'm at really $1 off. You can see it hanging down there. There's there's going to be an issue there until I have everything. So I can click Save. In this particular cost, well, you can make corrections. So you could come in here, and you need to make sure that you put in an amendment memo. So we'll come in here and say we forgot to add shipping. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in here we're going to make sure that they all balance. So now we're going to click Save. At that point in time here, you'll see there's a little arrow over here, and it'll say that the transaction has been edited. There we go. The transaction has been edited. Well, where can you also see that? There are some other things too, because some people might say, well, wait, didn't you have to make a journal entry on that? Well, actually, here's another thing where the software works to your favor, and it's working for you, knowing that you needed to make a journal entry for that. So you'll be able to find that if you go to the report, like your general ledger report. You're going to find there that there was a correction. So forgot to add shipping. So here is where you find that entry. You'd also be able to find that inside the, there is a log here, event log. So in there it will also show you the same thing. So if you go to the event log, and if I were to come in here, it's going to show you that also. If I could remember the date that I put that in there. Let me go back there just a moment. That was today. So if we go back here in our event log, it should also show that as well here. Forgot to add shipping. So you can see that there too. Now let's go back now into looking at, and I'm going to go back to our home page and into the assets area, and let's talk about the reconciling an account. Well, even before we do that, let's go back, because we were talking about transactions. There are some other type of transactions that you can do, and those imported transactions might be also from a, if you have payroll. Church360 Ledger works with Paycheck's payroll program. So you can import your payroll from Paycheck's, and that can be done here. We can certainly help you with that if you have Paycheck software, but that way you can have a payroll program that will work with the Church360 Ledger software. So reconciling your account. So let's look at, we're going to go into our assets. We're going to say we have our bank statement with us. So we're going to start drilling into our asset, into the checking account. Once we get into the checking account, now we can see that we do have this green button up here called Reconcile. Once you click on Reconcile, you'll see the screen change. So it's a pretty drastic change once you're into the Reconcile, because the screen is completely green. And this is where you would come in here and you would put in your statement date and your starting balance and ending balance. And then you're going to come in here and you're going to select those things that that you need to reconcile. Say, oh, this came in, and then everything should be off. Everything should be off by 0. So it should be zeroing out when you're doing that. But this is how you would do your reconciling. So once you've truly reconciled, you're going to see here Like with this one where there's a lock here, hopefully you can see that here. When I go over the top of that little lock, it says it's reconciled. So if it's reconciled, it can no longer be edited or changed in any way because it's already been reconciled. Another thing that we're going to take a quick peek at too is budgets. So with budgets, we'll be able to see here our income and expenses throughout, and everything is in here so that we can see January through December. One of the things that you can do, if you put a dollar amount into the total field here, let's say that for some reason it was $1,200. I could add that $1,200 into the total field, and you'll see over here to the right. So whenever you're doing your budgeting, if you put the total amount in this total field, it's going to evenly divide that amount throughout every single month. You'll also see when you click into a given, like the music ministry here, if I click into there, we'll be able to see that it also will display the previous year's budget and the previous year's actual. Now there is a way also that you can export this out to Excel, and when you do, and I'll show you this real quick here, it's going to show up down here. You can click on this. It's going to open up our Excel, and that might take just a minute, but now you can see that here. Now this is something that you can manipulate here. Let's say if we change some of these and then we needed to come back and we want to bring these back into Ledger. Once you've changed some of these dollar amounts here, you would be able to come and say, okay, I'm going to copy this, and then you could come right back into the Ledger, and in that same area you would be able to paste that. Say for instance, if it was here in January, I could paste that in there. So it would go in there, and you can copy it and you can paste it. We can certainly help you with that too. But a lot of churches, I think, find that inside Ledger itself is just as easy to be able to work within creating your budgets in Ledger. So I see that I'm kind of running short on a little bit of time here, so I do want to jump over here into our reports. So we'll take a look here at some of the reports here. So we'll look at the general ledger, which we've kind of looked at a little bit before in advance. The general ledger is kind of a running book of all the transactions, including your journal entries. So if you would like to on here, you can click on this. Well, you can see all your payees. If you don't want to see all of them, you can unselect some of these. So notice the one that we just entered today is in there. We can also group by payees if we want to do that. So when I do that, you'll see as I scroll down here, it's going to start grouping all the activities and all the transactions by those payees. And you can also group by account too. So those are things that you can do here within the general ledger. Now I'm going to go over here into the income and expenses. So these are broken down here into all of my income accounts and my expenses. Now you can collapse these categories here too. I mean, you can collapse them on a smaller scale or on a larger scale, however you wanted to see that. So I can start to collapse some of these things, or I can collapse the whole thing. So if I collapse all of it, now I can just see my totals on income and expenses, 2017 budget, the actuals, the percentage of budget, and the remaining. Now in the chart of accounts report, what we're seeing here is just our assets and liabilities. And then also down here further you can see your income and expenses as well. So you'll see the starting balance, ending balance, any debits, credits, the changes or the percentage of changes in theirs too. So just depends on, you know, how, if you want to collapse things or if you want to look at something a little bit more detail. And now we have the balance sheet here too. So again, you can see where you can export to Excel or you can print, and any of these, again, we have this date range selector, so you can go by year, quarter, or a month, and then you can see that this changes here too. So all of these are options for us, so we can just see what's available. And then you can manage any of these. So we'll go ahead and collapse these. So then you can see at the bottom here the assets less liabilities. And then I'll show you here just real quickly too, and this is in regards to our permissions. So we have roles. And the roles are, each account is going to have its own administrator, and this is a person that can see everything and do anything. But then you can start applying different other roles. So for example, on this one, on this youth leader, we could say, all right, for this youth leader, we're going to allow them to into the book called the Cross Point Church book, and we're going to allow them only to view certain accounts. The transactions, well, we're not going to allow them to edit or see some of these. They can't create or edit transactions, but they can view information on selected accounts. So which ones are we going to allow? Well, we might allow them to be able to see the youth restricted, so they can see that account, see how much is left in there and what has been spent. We'll allow them to see the youth fund. And in the expenses area, we might also say, you know what, they should be able to see this new account here that we've set up for youth camp. So we'll allow them to see all of those. Everything else is non-youth related, and it really does not apply. They don't need to have access to that. So this automatically saves. And now that I close this out, now you can see, it's a little bit harder to see maybe, but it does say 6 selected accounts that they have access to. So I've saved that and my role was updated. If I need to give anybody else access into that same type of youth leader permission or role, I can do so by just coming into users, and then I can add a new person. So it could be so here I would say I'm just going to give them access as a youth leader. And then when I click submit, it's actually going to email them out that information. So kind of taking a look at most things here with Church360 Ledger. I hope that's been a help for you in being able to get a good overall picture of Ledger, how that might work, the simplicity of that for those that would be, that really kind of work in the finance area, no matter what your experience level would be. I'm going to take a peek here now to see if there's any other questions. So bear with me just a moment as I kind of take a look at the different questions and see if there are any questions here for us. So just one moment here. Okay, so we have, there was a question here that said, can we set up automatic payments for internet or utilities? And we do have that availability. So I think I covered that before, but again, if you did need to do that, you could say, hey, I need to make a payment and I'm going to make this recurring. So at that point in time, we kind of looked at that actually as an example when we went into the AT&T and we were making this for a monthly internet charges. And then we would take this out of maybe this particular asset account where we did it for like 100, and then we could do this as this is going to be from this expense account. And then you just click Make Reoccurring. And once you click Make Reoccurring here, then it automatically, we're going to say this is every single month, and it's going to be on, let's say it's on the 10th day of the month, and then we'll save. So now we've just made a recurring transaction, and then that's going to show up here on the 10th day of, before the 10th day of August. We're going to see that as a reminder, and it's going to come up here. So I don't see any other questions today. So I do appreciate your time today. It really kind of ends our time for today on Church360 Ledger. If there are any other questions, please feel free to submit them now. And if I don't see anything here within the next moment, we'll go ahead and end the webinar for today. And I don't think I see any other questions. So I do thank you for your time today and taking a look at Church360 Ledger. And if there are any questions, and I'm going to try to get back here to here and just say, if you would like, these are open for you to do. If you go visit 360ledger.com, you can start your free trial. It's a 37-day trial, and that's available just by signing up there. It gives you 37 days, and some people say, well, that's kind of an odd amount of time. But the reason is so that you can fully work within it in a month, but it gives you that extra week in case you want to go ahead and reconcile some of those accounts when your bank statement comes due. Then you can go back and reconcile. Also note that you can call us. There is a help system within Ledger itself so that you can submit questions to us, and or you can even call us during that trial. Here is my contact information as well, so you can call this number. You can get in touch with me, and I'd be glad to help answer any other additional questions that you may have. This number will also get you in touch with our sales team as well. So I'm one of a few of us here in that sales area, but be glad to help answer any questions that you might have. Again, I thank you so much for your time and appreciate it. Appreciate you attending. So I'm going to sign off for now and wish you have a great day and hope to talk with you again sometime soon.